Hey guys, Nike here. I've been playing a bit of Guild Wars 1 recently while waiting for the new Path of Exile League and for Guild Wars 2 to eventually release some compelling content. And I've been having a lot of fun doing casual PvE with heroes, which is my preferred way to play the game these days. So with the 15th anniversary celebration, they added some new elite skills to the game. And those elite skills have in a large part turned the PvE meta a bit upside down. The Assassin skill is basically a straight up upgrade to the already overpowered Dagger Spammer build, and the new Necromancer skill, along with the new Necromancer Scythe weapon, created a very Guild Wars 2 Reaper Shroud style playstyle that is super fun and powerful and really just awesome. And the Paragon Elite skill is super busted in combination with the very strong Mesmer hero team comps that are very prevalent in the PvE hero meta. Today, though, I'd like to go over the build that I've been playing on Warrior, which uses the new Warrior Elite skill 7-Weapon Stance. The Elite skill is a stance that gives you plus 16 attributes to all weapon skills. Essentially, an absolutely insane amount of free attribute points. And along with that, you get a 33% increased attack speed buff. This means with minimal investment, we can hit 20 Scythe Mastery as a warrior. And we can use those free points we would otherwise have to invest into a weapon mastery attribute to get some high value skills we'd ordinarily miss out on in other attribute lines. Overall, this build is very high damage, easily beating a Warrior's Endurance-based Axe build. It has better damage and better AoE than a Dagger Spammer Warrior's Endurance build. Of course, it's not going to be quite as potentially powerful as a 100 Blades build in like a dedicated solo farming situation, or in speed clears for spiking. But for general PvE, it's really absurd. So with that said, let's get into the build. Alright guys, first up is gear. So optimally, you want to have two scythes, one with Zealous, one with Vampiric, and both of them will have either defense or fortitude. I personally am lazy and I don't like to swap weapons that much. So I just go with Sundering. You give up a little bit of DPS, but you gain a lot of not having to think about weapon swapping off your Vampiric when you're out of combat. So for me, Sundering is pretty good. And in a build like this where you actually hit really hard, Sundering loses a lot less DPS than builds like Dagger Spammer, where you're hitting not particularly as hard on any individual hit, but you're hitting a lot. In builds like that, Vampiric is just light years better. But in builds like this that are big hitters, you can get away with Sundering without giving up too much. As far as armor, we're going to go with Sentinels, since we're stacking strength. And you're going to want a headpiece with +1 strength and a superior strength rune. You want, of course, the best vigor rune that you can afford. You want minor tactics somewhere, and then I personally recommend using 2 Weetai runes. Some people would say use Clarity in one of them. I'm not a huge fan of Clarity. I feel like with between Asuran Scan and my heroes removing my blinds, I don't really care about blind too much, so Clarity can go, and I'll take the extra 10 HP and be pretty happy about that. For attributes, as you can see, we go 16 in strength to make our 7-weapon stance and our power attack be as badass as can be. We go 12 in tactics to get to the limit to help us out a little bit. And then we go with 6 in Scythe Mastery. Technically speaking, you only need to go 4 in Scythe Mastery, but really there's no other good use of the points, so just throw them in there. It's not going to get you another point of tactics, so there. As far as our core skills, these are the 4 core skills that cannot come off the bar. 7-weapon stance, for obvious reasons, gives us our Scythe Mastery. To the limit really boosts not only our HP, but the instant adrenaline at the start of a fight really allows us to start popping off our DPS early with no buildup. Radiant Scythe is how we fuel these two. We can use these two skills off cooldown and use power attack off cooldown thanks to Radiant Scythe. So the synergy between these are all very good, which gives us some optional slots. Now, in the first two optional slots, I highly recommend taking additional adrenaline-based Scythe skills, and that would be Chilling Victory and Reap Impurities. These are both skills that are going to do big AoE damage. We're going to talk a little bit about Reap Impurities later in more detail, but these are just big AoE damage skills, and you should be very easily able to fill your adrenaline and just spam these all day. And when you don't have an adrenaline skill up, power attack will be there for you. So those skills are good, which leaves us with two optional slots. Personally, I like all melee builds with a Cern Scan. It again allows me to ignore blinds and ignore stances, block stances, and allows me to ignore all kinds of things that make playing a melee build a headache. And then we have our last slot, which is I Am Unstoppable in most cases. I Am Unstoppable. Pretty much every melee build you're going to see recommended anywhere is going to use I Am Unstoppable because it's just all around really good. The other options for these slots, I would say that Save Yourselves is totally a viable option. Where is it? Save Yourselves is a totally viable option. Not as many people are using it these days because it's a little bit outdated. Most builds these days are about just killing as fast as can be, and Save Yourself doesn't work. However, Save Yourself does have pretty good synergy with To The Limit, so if you do feel like you need it, it is definitely an optional skill that you can go in there. And really the only other skill that I would say is really worth bringing in your optionals is For Great Justice, which is pretty good for situations where you are fighting balled up big groups of enemies. Pop For Great Justice, and you can just basically hit Reap Impurities on cooldown because it'll instantly refill the adrenaline, which means that you can like literally mow down enemies like super quickly in big balls. Like they won't stand a chance. And against bosses, it lets your 3 adrenaline skills come off cooldown quite a bit faster, so your DPS is slightly higher on bosses. However, I don't recommend it as part of the main bar because it's a type of skill that is a win more skill. If I have a bunch of enemies balled up and I'm able to like hit them with my scythe, it doesn't really matter if I'm spamming Reap Impurities or auto attacking or using any of my other skills. I've got them right where I want them and I'm doing what I want to them. So it doesn't seem so great. And when it's a single target thing, the minor DPS difference between For Great Justice and anything else is not going to be like a huge deal breaker. Whereas a Cern Scan can get me out of a really bad situation, and I Am Unstoppable also will get me out of a really bad situation. So these are skills that help me win. For Great Justice is a win more skill. So in that regard, that is why I don't take those. So with the core part of the build out of the way, let's talk a little bit about hero synergies. All right, for basically, as everyone knows, for any melee-based player, you're going to want to use a Channeling Ritualist with Strength and Honor. It is going to make your DPS really nutty, and every melee build wants this hero in their team, and that's just the way it goes. This build particularly benefits from this skill, Withering Aura. Target allies' melee attacks cause weakness condition, which basically means you can use Reap Impurities and always get the bonus. Always getting the bonus is really good for AoE. The drawback is you need a pretty heavy investment in death magic to make this work. Me personally, I don't run a lot of team comps with a guy who has enough death magic to make it work. I run kind of like a Mesmer setup group and don't really have room to bring a Minion Mancer anymore. With that said, if you are running a comp that has a Minion Mancer, for sure give him Withering Aura, and it will fuel your Reap Impurities, and your damage will be, your personal damage will be much higher. And this is kind of a situation where it gets into, do I want to run this Minion Mancer character and make my DPS higher, or do I want to kick him out of the party and just run another Energy Surge Mesmer and make my team DPS higher? You have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of that. I know a lot of players also, they like being the hero. They want basically, a lot of people play, they want 7 heroes that just singularly buff the player. And the player does all the damage. And everyone else exists to buff and take care of the player. And that's a totally viable way to play. And if that is how you want to be set up, then for sure find a place to get Withering Aura into your build. And if you're already using a guy with Death Magic, then it's very easy. You just change out one skill for Withering Aura. But those are the big synergies with this build. Lastly, let's discuss gameplay a little bit. Ideally, you want to do your best to ball up enemies or corner stack and choke point them to maximize your Scythe AoE cleave. Keep up your stance, of course, 100% of the time, and use to the limit at the start of a fight to get instant adrenaline. Use your power attack and adrenaline skills off cooldown. Really, the only thing to watch out for is that you don't want to use Radiant Scythe if you're at full energy, and you don't want to use Reap Impurities if the enemy's only condition is a deep wound, but other than those 2 precepts, you're pretty golden. As far as downsides to this build go compared to other options, I'm very used to playing with an assassin main or an assassin secondary on all my melee classes, so not having a Shadow Step to engage in every fight is a big adjustment. But with a bit of practice, you can kind of get used to playing without it, and really that just entails flagging your heroes back a little bit and having to tank for a second or two. But once you get adjusted to the playstyle of not having a Shadow Step to engage, you get used to it, and it works out fine. So that's it, guys. It's really insane that in 2020, Guild Wars 1 got some new elite skills that have revitalized the meta and created some new builds. So really, as mind-blowing as that is, I really would urge you guys to take advantage of it and log into Guild Wars if you haven't in a while and experiment with some of these builds and play with them while we wait for content in other games, and really just kind of dive into the new stuff in Guild Wars 1 as much as you can, just to get a feel for it. It's pretty rare that we get these things, so we got to really appreciate it when we do. With that said, thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I will do my best to stream Guild Wars 1 stuff in the next coming weeks until Path of Exile League comes out. So you should be able to, if you're following my stream, catch me on Twitch, and yeah, that's basically it. I will see you guys soon. Thanks, and thanks for watching.